To another episode of the Miami Hal Real Estate Show. I am Hal Feldman, and I always have an interesting guest. We've had the mayor of the county here. We've had the appraiser for all of the county, and we've had a ton of newsmakers, politicians, and everybody in between. Today, I have the person you probably want to be talking to. This is a mortgage lender. His name is Ron Derrick. Ron, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Hal.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
We know each other outside business too.
Yes.
You're a fun guy.
So are you.
All right, good. But in work life, you work for which company, and what do you do? Tell people out there what your main role is.
I work for a company called Choice One Mortgage. We are located in Cutler Bay. We are a blended real estate company. So we have a real estate company, a mortgage company, a title and escrow company, and a real estate company. So it's basically a one-stop shop. If you wanted to buy a house or anything home related, we can help with.
All right. So on the real estate agent side, that's kind of friendly competition, but they certainly offer a lot of things under one roof. And we're going to specifically talk about mortgages because right now, I think that's kind of primary on a lot of people's mind.
Yes.
Because things are starting to change. Before the pandemic, we had kind of, I'll call it standard operating procedure when it came to mortgages.
Yes.
As the pandemic rolled through, and we still are obviously in the hopefully tail end effects of it, things are starting to change. So what I want to do is spend a half an hour talking to Ron. But as I'm asking questions, we do have all of the social media platforms open for you to type your comments and questions in. We'll be looking up periodically to see if we can address some of your questions directly. Ron, tell us what's changing because I feel it in the air.
Interest rates.
Interest rates. Okay.
Yes. We've seen, I think I've seen in the last 6 weeks, interest rates rise about 3/8 of a point. The Fed obviously is talking about raising rates 4 or 5 times this year. I know they just met last week, and I think they curbed it a little bit, but it's still coming. The party's over, as we like to say, in the lending world. That's the biggest change. COVID has been challenging, but yeah, you're right. We're coming to the end of that, and it's starting to get a little easier to qualify. COVID really made it very challenging with self-employed borrowers because it's hard to verify income when you're self-employed, and it just became very, very difficult to process. But things have started to get a little bit easier as we're getting in the tail end of COVID.
We're going to spend some time talking about how consumers look at mortgages, but I want to jump kind of behind the curtain for a few minutes.
Okay.
And at least I hope I'm on the right track because mortgage lenders are looking to have continuous business where they know for the next 30 years, 20 years, 15 years, they've got some money coming in. They're making money on money, correct? That's really the goal of any lender.
Sure.
Right. So right now there's a large number of people that would love to take out a loan because on the street or people are saying, hey, it's free money. Now it isn't truly free, but because the rates are so low, it almost feels as if it's a free ride.
Yes.
You know, you're borrowing $300,000 to purchase something or even more. And the mortgage cost per month is not that high, right?
That is absolutely correct. And it kind of correlates with the rise of prices of homes now. You know, I remember when I bought my first home, probably 20 years ago, I remember high-fiving my wife that we had 7 3/4 interest rate on the mortgage.
You went right to where I wanted to. So
Okay.
It was 7 and change.
Yeah, when I bought my first house.
And we're talking, as you just mentioned, a 3/8 of a point change now.
Correct.
When you're looking at 7%, you go from 7 to 7 3/8, a much smaller percentage increase, as
Correct.
opposed to now you're at 2.75 or 3, going up 3/8 feels a lot more.
Absolutely.
And has a larger effect on your purchasing power,
Yes.
right? So let's understand that lenders want to lend. For a while, as you were saying during COVID, for self-employed people, it was more difficult to qualify.
Yes.
How is that changing? I mean, you guys are always looking, hey, how can I get somebody in who is capable of paying the mortgage, right?
Right.
So how did that change? You're saying it's different now.
Well, it's different in the sense that now, when COVID first came out in March of 2020, everybody's business pretty much stopped, right? I mean, especially self-employed borrowers, and nobody went to work. Everybody was quarantined. So when people were trying to get mortgages in the early 2021, their income wasn't supporting the mortgage. Okay. So part of the qualifications of a self-employed borrower back then was we need to see your bank statements for the last 3 months to see that you're actually making money now. But now that we're kind of in the tailwind, and 2021 is now behind us, most people in business are back to where they were pre-pandemic. Most. But there are other programs too that have started to come into the marketplace that really help and benefit self-employed borrowers that don't verify income like the traditional way.
Okay. And so you're now obviously in the thick of things, as you always are. What type of people are you seeing knock on your door, so to speak? Are you seeing people making purchases, or refinancing is still
That's a great
the
question.
name of the game?
So the purchase business, as you know, because you're in real estate, the inventory is so low, and you can have a house for sale and have 30, 40 people show up on an open house, and you're competing against 40 people to get under contract. So I think the purchase business has slowed down because of that. You have a lot of cash buyers that you see, a lot of people moving in from California, from New Jersey, from out of the country, that are coming with bucket loads of cash, right? You leave California, you sell a $2 million home in California, and you come to South Florida, and you go find a place on the water, and you're like, $750,000 for that? Here, take my money. And so these cash buyers are just knocking all the regular, family type of borrowers just out of the market. It's sad.
So as a lender trying to work with those buyers, how can you assist them in at least trying to be competitive?
Okay.
Maybe not against cash, but against the other people that are looking to borrow. How do you stand out?
That's a great question. Do you work with buyers a lot?
I work with buyers and sellers. I tend to want to work with sellers,
right? And but
buyers, I certainly have quite a few of them, and they're not real happy right now. They're frustrated.
I would give advice to somebody that a lot of real estate agents may not like, but
I want to hear it.
Again, you have to be competitive in this market, right? When Joe Seller lists their house with Hal,
thank you,
or anybody, you should list it with Hal, by the way. Generally, the commission is between 5% and 6% is what we're seeing normal. If I'm working with a buyer and they go to see Hal's house and they have a real estate agent that they're working with to show them properties, I would say, buyer, if you want that house, go directly to Hal and put your offer in directly with Hal. In a sense, it's going to allow you to push that contract a little harder.
Okay.
And let's be honest, right? We're all in business to make money, and as agents, if you have 3 contracts, one and two of them come from other agents, and you have one yourself, you're going to try to, it's just human nature. You're going to try to push that contract. But is it right? I don't know. Is it moral? I don't know. But you're asking me how to be competitive, and that's probably the best answer. Now, another way is to put more money down, because again, if you're competing against 3 buyers on the same property, and buyer A is putting 3.5% down FHA, which is the minimum you could put down, and buyer B is putting 10% down, and buyer C is putting 20% down, as a seller, I'm taking buyer C because they've got more money in the game. And a lot of times you need more money because the properties now are not appraising to the purchase price. So the guy that has more money at the end of the day can come in with a little bit more money above the appraised value.
It's very interesting to watch you talk about this stuff, because I will come back to the very first thing you mentioned about going directly to a listing agent.
Yeah.
Because I think there's pros and cons to that. So I didn't take complete offense to it, but it was certainly a controversial thing to bring up.
It is.
But you're saying, and we're going to dig into this as to why, if you have as a seller, if you have 3 offers in front of you and they're all at the same purchase price,
Okay.
yet one is 3.5%, as you mentioned, one's at 5% down, and the other one, one's at 10% down, the other one's at 20%
Right.
down. You as a seller are going to look at the 20% because there's more money in the game.
Correct.
Okay. So that's only if your purchase price is the same as the others. What if you had a 20% buyer that offered $480 for the property,
Okay.
and you had somebody that was only putting 3.5% down, but they're offering 510? How does that change your perception
As a
of what
seller?
those 2 offers are as a seller?
Well, my first question would be for the guy that's offering, you said 540?
510.
510. So the guy that's offering 510 but only has 3.5% down,
Right.
is that all the money that he has in the bank? And will that property appraise at 510?
Okay. You went right to where I was hoping you'd go.
Okay.
I was guiding you into the appraisal.
Okay.
So I sit with buyers and sellers all the time. And I'm going to tell you about my perspective as a listing agent. I go in to potentially earn the right to be the listing agent on a property.
Right.
And I know that if they're interviewing other agents, there'll be several other agents that will walk in there and tell them, I can get you. Those are horrible words.
Yes, I agree.
To hear as a seller, because I can get you are 4 words that means that agent thinks they're special and they can do something that is outside of what the market conditions are. And you should run away from those agents.
Yeah.
The right way to select an agent is, first of all, find the person that you feel is most professional and has a good personality match. And then the key part is somebody that presents the paperwork to support what their listing
Yes,
price should be
absolutely.
and what they truly believe the property will appraise for before you even go to market. Because any other agent that doesn't prove to you by numbers those things is setting you up to get into a contract that is unrealistic.
Yes.
And you're simply wasting time.
Wasting time.
Okay.
You hit
So
it right on the nail.
You see it from the other side. As a lender, somebody comes to you on a property that you have in your head because you've been here forever, right?
Mhm.
You've lived in South Florida forever.
74. Yeah.
You probably can point at a house and go, it's worth somewhere between here and here on your own. Now, you're not an official
Correct.
appraiser, but you can do that type of thing.
Yes.
So again, we're going to use $500,000 as our core value. That's
Okay.
what the value of a property is. And somebody who's going to be your client comes to you and says, here's the contract I just got in and I've offered 520. What's in your head?
Is it going to appraise?
Okay.
That's
And
the first thing.
how do you work with that particular client, that buyer? How do you talk to them about the fact that in the back of your head, you're like, geez, I don't think this is going to appraise. Do you mention it at all, or do you just work it through the system?
What I normally do when I'm sitting with a client is, and they bring me a contract and it's at, you said 510, let's just say.
Yeah, just
And
a little bit above what.
Let's
you
say it's
believe
listed at 500 and they want to come in with 510. I'm going to, and I don't trust Zillow to throw a rock at, but it gives you kind of a baseline.
You haven't been on the show before. Zillow is a 4-letter dirty word
It is.
on this show. So we all know
Okay.
that Zillow is very good math,
Right.
but it has no idea what South Florida is,
It
what
doesn't.
a property's near. So it is a decent tool to find out approximately
Approximate, and that's what I do.
what a a price per square foot is in a neighborhood.
Yeah. But
an individual house, it has zero accuracy.
And I do have some of my lenders that I use. They have what they call an AVM, an
Mhm.
automatic valuation model that's built into their portals.
Right.
That gives you a lot more accurate data.
Yeah.
To kind of give, but it still gives you a range, right?
Actually, at this point, a very wide range.
A very
but yes.
wide range. So the first thing I'm going to ask the borrower is, I need to make sure they have assets to cover the difference between the appraised value and the purchase price, right? Because the way the lender looks at this
Mhm.
is that they're going to lend. Let's say you're doing 80% financing. You're going to put 20% down. Okay. I'm going to go back to the 20% because it's a little easier to explain.
That's fine. No problem.
Okay. And let's say we're talking about a $500,000 house. Okay. So a $500,000 house at 80% financing is going to be a $400,000 loan. Okay. If they buy for 510 but the property only appraises at 500, the lender's still only going to give them 400,000. Okay. They're going to be responsible for the extra 10%, the 10,000 in most cases. Okay. But again, I'm going to go back to the seller, and why the seller is going to take the 20% is because conventional financing allows up to 95% financing. Okay. So where I'm going with this is that they can still go in with a $400,000 loan amount. They're just going to be above 80% financing. They might be at 82%, but they can still get the deal done. And as a seller, as a listing agent, you're going to educate your seller when you get 15 contracts on the table, right?
Right.
And you're going to advise the seller, as a great agent you are, is, hey, Mr. Seller, this is probably the best offer, and here's why. Not only are they putting 20% down, here's another thing that's very important if you're buying a house and you're working with an agent and you're competing against hundreds of other buyers. It's called desktop underwriter. Okay. Now, as you know, my wife's a real estate agent as well. I'm not, there's no competition here. We're friendly.
I brought you on the show. Yeah. We're okay.
So my wife, when she lists properties, and she's like, honey, I got 20 offers on this property. Can you help me sift through them? Right. Because I can look at contracts like you and kind of discern and see what's good and what's bad about them. And there might be 10 with the desktop underwriter approval attached to the regular broker's approval letter. The other 10 that don't have them go to the trash can.
Okay.
We don't even look at them.
All right. So it's almost like you're the book, and I'm now going to sit for a few seconds and talk to the audience about basically highlighting what you just said.
Okay.
A pre-approval letter is simply a letter that the lender provides a buyer that essentially says you are creditworthy for purchasing up to this purchase amount, correct?
Correct.
But there's nothing beyond what I just said in that letter. And so the reality is agents kind of know to not give a lot of weight to a pre-approval letter.
That is absolutely right.
The desktop underwriter software, which by the way, we internally kind of say DU.
That is correct.
A DU worksheet or a DU data sheet.
Correct.
Provides a lot more detailed financial information without getting to the point where there's any privacy issues.
That is correct. There's no private information.
So the best thing a buyer can do working with an agent is to get not only a pre-approval letter, but this DU and a proof of funds as to where their cash is going to come from for their down payment. And all three of those things, pre-approval letter, DU, and a proof of funds, goes in with your offer. And as Ron was just talking about, his wife being an agent, when she gets a bunch of offers, she looks at it and she says, if there's no DU and I have some with DU, the rest of them are in the garbage.
That's correct.
The reason why I'm underscoring this is that we are in such a competitive market right now that you are literally, as a buyer, wasting your time if you do not have this locked down with the lender that you're going to use before you go out and see property.
Correct.
Literally, properties that are going on market the very first day they're going to have a feeding frenzy. It's just a fact.
That is correct.
In fact, now we're seeing out-of-town buyers sight unseen offers, and many of them cash. So if you have any possibility of actually purchasing a home in this type of market, you have to be early bird gets the worm.
Correct. Completely
accurate, and with a ton of information to provide to a potential seller so that they're going to see you as a special offer, because you're not going to be the only one. You're going to be one of dozens.
And that point brings up another thought that I have is, number one, the desktop underwriter, you don't need a physical property address to get a desktop underwriter. Okay. I can do what they call a to be determined desktop underwriter. So we just put a price in, we put to be determined on the address, we estimate the taxes, we estimate the insurance, and we run the DU, and you have that.
From municipality to municipality, yes, the taxes are slightly different, but on a $500,000 home, the taxes are usually
about $7,000 maybe for taxes.
Yeah.
Insurance, I'll probably use between on a $500,000, I'll use $5,000 for insurance.
Okay.
and maybe 6,000 for taxes.
And
Even on the DU, I'll probably even overestimate, because you want the DU to be the worst case scenario, right? Another thing to get an advantage is, again, you're right. A lot of these investors are coming sight unseen, but you got to think about this, right? If you have somebody that's been in their home for 20, 30 years, this home is very, very special to them. They would much rather sell this house to a young family that's going to grow up in that house like they did than an investor from California or New York. So as a buyer, if you can any way you can get in touch with that seller, and you can do it. There's so many ways to find people now, Facebook, social media platforms. You have to take that extra step to stand out of the crowd and find some rapport with that seller, that they're like, man, I had this 520 offer of all cash from this guy from New York, but I have my asking price. These guys are putting 20% down. They're a new family with children, and I'm going to sell it to these guys. And I've seen that so many times.
I think what you just said, again, there's a tiny bit of it that grates with me, and I'm going to talk to you about how we can overcome that.
Yeah.
But I love it, because what I'm doing now with several of my buyers is we have a letter that is almost stock. We love the house, and then they customize what they liked about that particular house. And when we submit, it is with a letter that is submitted literally with the offer, so that it cannot be thrown out by the agent. It's all one big PDF.
Right.
And then when it gets presented, they see, oh my gosh, it's a young family with a dog, or this or that.
With the
kids.
picture and everything.
Exactly. But you said go even further than that. Go through social media and find a way to make a connection between buyer and seller directly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Now, I'm going to tell you, I love that idea with some caveats.
Yes.
One, there is the potential that a seller doesn't want their privacy broken.
Yeah.
And wants everything to go through the agent. So just be aware, if you're going to try that, it won't work with everybody, but I think it's a great idea. Yeah. The second part of this is, and this is true in this market or any market, buyers and sellers tend to get emotional about their transaction.
Mm-hmm.
Buyers are, wanting to provide a home for their family, and they sometimes they will value something inside that home based on emotion. Oh my God, they had the same curtains that we had, in our last home, and so this is meant to be. I'm just making things up, right? Or the seller is, hey, when I moved in here, I was about this 35 years old. And, I really would like to sell to a 35-year-old that has, a daughter and a son and a dog or whatever. Yeah. So there's emotion there. And if the potential buyer goes directly to the seller, it is almost all about emotion. And what I want to make sure the audience knows is it's important to remember that your professionals, the agents, are there to make sure things are done professionally. Right. And that when emotion can cause problems in the transactions, we're there to buffer the buyer and seller to make a deal happen. So, I love the idea, but do it with some caution, and certainly let the agent that you're working with know what's going on.
I agree.
So there's a little bit of management there. There's so much, and I know that I can't even begin to explain this. There's so much that the agents do without the knowledge of the buyer and seller that really try to make things happen behind the scenes.
You are 150% correct, because I see my wife, the work that she does to put a deal and get a deal to the closing table. And a lot of people think, oh, I can just do this on my own. And some can. But having an agent is going to make you in a way better position, especially when you're selling a house, right?
Exactly.
I mean, there's so many things and contracts and deadlines and title and surveys, and to the average person, it could be very overwhelming.
All right. We spent about 25 minutes so far talking about what and teaching people things that are tried and true methods of how to get a financed offer together and how to work with the lender. Yeah. Now we're going to spend a few minutes with you and a crystal ball, because everybody wants to know what's going to happen over the next couple of months. Right now, tight inventory, very frustrated buyers, and prices that appear to continue to be going up, maybe not at the fast rate that they were during the height of the pandemic, but they're still rising. And appraisals are,
Not keeping
now
up.
not matching, right?
Correct.
So let's start off with what percentage of deals that are crossing your desk are having problems with appraisal at this point?
25%.
That's high.
Mhm.
What's normal?
I don't think there's any normal in this market.
Okay. No, I mean,
Because-
like before the pandemic, it was 2%, 5%.
Yeah, I would say under 5% before pandemic.
So again,
And
there's
then
my
the
highlighter.
single family homes are going to be even worse than condos because
Yeah.
after the pandemic, nobody wants to live in a condo.
Right.
But, go ahead.
So the highlighter pen again. Before the pandemic, all the professionals that are real estate related are pretty much in line and understanding each other. And so very few, 2 to 3%, are having problems with the appraisal matching the contract price.
Right.
Okay. Now you're saying 25% of them are failing
Yeah.
to appraise properly.
Mhm.
So what's happening with the 25% that are having that issue? Do they end up becoming deals, or what percentage fail at that point?
I would say out of the 25% that don't appraise, I would say 20% can work a deal out with the seller, and the seller, comes down to reality. I mean, right now every seller thinks their house is,
Gold.
gold, right? I don't think that's ever changed.
That's true.
But they're getting gold now. You know what I mean?
So
And
1/4 of all the deals are having some level of problem.
Yeah.
And of those quarter, 80% of them do not make it
No.
to actually keys in hand and
That's
cash transfer. So that's already not a wonderful picture to start with. What do the next few months, let's say 3 to 6 months, look like in your crystal ball?
in my crystal ball, I would say that the rate increases that we're going to see, I can't tell you when they're going to be. I've already seen 3/8 increase. It's going to slow down the amount of buyers, because what somebody could have qualified for at 500,000 when the rates are at 3 1/4, when the rates go to 3 3/4, now they can only afford 420,000. So I'm hoping it's gonna slow down the number of buyers, but we're still dealing with the cash buyers. I can't tell you how long that's gonna last.
Right.
If you're trying to buy a house, my advice to you is be persistent. Don't give up. Understand understand the market and what you need to do to be competitive. Work with a good lender that's going to get you a desktop underwriter.
This guy right here.
Me or anybody. I mean, listen, I've been doing this for so long. I love what I do, but a lot of people have their own relationships with their lenders.
Yeah.
Make sure they get you a desktop underwriter, and just try to stand out from the crowd. Don't give up though. I got clients that just don't give up, and they're homeowners now. People that get too frustrated in life, I think it carries over in everything in life. You have to be determined in anything that you do. You got to set your mind to it and do it and get it done.
Now, this is a little bit out of your realm, but I'm sure it's in your mind. You help people get their loans.
Correct.
During the pandemic, a number of people, a relatively large number of people, had forbearance available to them.
Yes.
So that meant that their lender did not allow them not to pay their mortgage
That's right.
for even up to
6 or
18 months.
18 months, yeah.
Right at the outset. The longest is like 18 months of, hey, you don't pay us anything.
Right.
Yet during those 18 months, the property taxes were still due,
Mhm.
and the insurance was still due.
Yeah.
And some of those lenders bore those costs too.
They all did.
Okay. So now we're in 2022, and we just had the 1st of January go by, and the lenders are able to hopefully recapture the money that is due them from prior years worth of forbearance, correct?
Yeah, it's most of these lenders just put it on the back of the loan.
Right.
Like I went through a forbearance, like most people.
They put it on the back of the loan.
That's correct.
But the property taxes and insurance is what I'm focusing on. So let's say you had a $3,000 mortgage before this whole pandemic started, and now the lender needs to make up the money they've put out front for you. And that $3,000 a month mortgage is now a $3,800 a month mortgage to catch up to those other things.
I haven't seen that because, like in my personal forbearance, I think I was 8 months,
Mhm.
and they paid my taxes and insurance and everything
And
that I
they're not
owed.
asking you to catch up with that.
No,
stuff.
everything I owed.
Everything's on the back.
Everything's
end.
on the back.
Wow. Okay.
But every servicer is different, so you got to talk to your own servicer because
My
all
concern, and I've talked about it on the show, is that that has to be made up. And some of the lenders are not doing that. And they're asking for a change in the rate, monthly rate that people are paying. And that potentially causes
more problems.
foreclosure or pre-foreclosure action. And sellers, owners are going to have to become sellers because, hey, I used to be able to afford $3,000. I can't possibly afford $3,800 a month.
Or just
And
refinance.
before I get,
or just refinance. But if you're in forbearance, in order to refinance, you have to get out of forbearance and you have to make 3 mortgage payments on time. So if you're in forbearance and you think this is going to happen, tell them you want out and make 3 payments.
Mm-hmm.
You have enough to refinance because the values have gone up. Do a refinance, and when you do your refinance, everything will be set straight again. Your escrows and everything.
Great idea.
Yeah.
Ron Derrick, Choice One Mortgage. Hal Feldman, Remax Advanced Realty. This is the Miami Hal Real Estate Show. Every single week we talk about great things. We appreciate you tuning in. And if you have any questions, Ron, what's your phone number? How can people reach you?
Yes, thank you. 305-677-7117, or email me ron@choice1.us, choiceone.us, like the good United States that we live in.
Perfect. Until next week, have a great week.